Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. After the historic meeting between the US and Russian presidents in Alaska last week, leaders from Ukraine and Europe rushed to the White House. In a moment of impulse, Trump sold out Kiev's interests to Russia. This is why the EU is worried about being betrayed by the United States. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov said in a media interview last week that Russia supports providing strong security guarantees for Ukraine and does not rule out the possibility of UN Security Council members, including Western countries and China, offering such guarantees. However, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy declared that there is no need for China to be among the countries providing security guarantees. He claimed that China failed to prevent the outbreak of the war. On August 22nd, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs responded, stating that China has always acted openly and honestly regarding the Ukraine crisis, upholding an objective and impartial stance, and that all relevant parties are well aware of this. The spokesperson also said that China believes all parties should promote a political resolution to the Ukraine crisis based on a common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable approach to security. China is willing to play a constructive role in this regard. According to a report by the Belarusian Telegraph Agency on August 22nd, Belarusian President Lukashenko, during an interview with multiple international media outlets in Minsk that day, commented on Zelensky's remarks, criticizing them as lacking consideration and being overly hasty. He pointed out that by saying this, Zelenskyy seemed to suggest that China should have intervened and prevented the war from happening. Lukashenko rebuked that, in fact, the responsibility for avoiding war should have rested with Ukraine itself. He also said that it must be made clear that without the participation and guarantees of China, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, achieving lasting peace in any region of the world would be extremely difficult. Zelenskyy should have thought carefully before speaking and not been so rash. When asked whether Belarus could possibly become a guarantor of Ukraine's security, Lukashenko responded that, generally speaking, when discussing security guarantor countries, people first think of the permanent members of the UN Security Council, such as major powers like the United States and China, as well as major European countries that are not Security Council members, and sometimes even Belarus is mentioned. He said that when someone privately brought up this idea to him before, he couldn't help but ask in return, does providing such security guarantees for another country really serve our own interests? Lukashenko said that Belarus certainly could intervene in the situation in Ukraine, but at present, there is no rush to do so. In his view, the most urgent task for Belarus is to work with Russia to take measures to prevent Ukraine from becoming a springboard for attacks against the two countries in the future. Because European countries are seeking to share the responsibility of guaranteeing Ukraine's security together with the United States, and all parties are discussing issues such as sending troops to Ukraine. On the 22nd, Russian media outlet TASS reported that several experts and analysts criticized Zelenskyy, saying that his remarks were both illogical and unfair. Wang Lan, vice chairman and director of the Shanghai Huantai International Strategic Research Center, pointed out that over the past 3 years, China has continuously imported agricultural products from Ukraine, provided humanitarian aid, and sent special envoys to mediate and promote peace talks. Zelensky's remarks are clearly not sincere. He believes that Zelenskyy failed to establish good relations with neighboring countries, which led Ukraine to become the center of the struggle between the West and Russia, turning it into a proxy for the West, and now Ukraine still has to act in the interests of others. Sun Qi, executive director of the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies at the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences, also told Russian media that Zelenskyy cannot deny the important role China, as a major power, has played in mediating and resolving the Russia-Ukraine conflict. However, he only focuses on NATO countries supplying weapons and ammunition to Ukraine, which intensifies the conflict, while turning a blind eye to the 12 important principles proposed by China in its position on the political settlement of the Ukraine crisis. He emphasized that China has always maintained its consistent position, calling on both sides of the Russia-Ukraine conflict to resolve their disputes through negotiations and other political means. He believes that Zelenskyy has not fully recognized the ultimate consequences of the path pursued by the West. Sun Qi further stated that China will continue to play the role of mediator in promoting a political solution, rather than forcing either side to take specific actions. All parties are sovereign states, and China will not, like the United States, demand that these countries fulfill certain obligations. Wang Xiaoquan, a researcher at the Institute of Russian, Eastern European, and Central Asian Studies of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, also said that the initiative clearly proposes a political solution to the Ukraine conflict. China has already made significant efforts to promote a resolution to the Ukraine crisis. He emphasized that China is not just making verbal statements, but is systematically helping to solve the problem. Earlier, when interviewed by Russian media, Kirill Karpovich, vice-rector of the Russian Diplomatic Academy, also said that the security guarantee proposal put forward by the Russian foreign minister is highly feasible and realistic. The core content of the security guarantees still needs to be negotiated with the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, among which China's participation is crucial, and China's role in this process is indispensable. However, Associate Professor Belakis from the Institute of World Economy and International Relations at the Russian Academy of Sciences believes that due to concerns about China's rising influence in global politics, the West may never accept China's participation as a security guarantor. He also mentioned that Russia is working to promote the conclusion of a peace agreement to comprehensively resolve the Ukraine crisis and ensure that the conflict does not recur. To briefly summarize, first, Zelenskyy is being forced by the United States to move toward various parts of Russia, to pay compensation to the US, and to give up half of Ukraine's rare earth mineral rights. He may be driven to desperation by Trump and thus lashes out at China, which is actually completely unnecessary and will only put Ukraine in an even more difficult situation. You have to understand, China is still supporting Ukraine right now, buying their agricultural products and providing a certain level of support to Ukraine's economy. Second, Lukashenko's criticism is very blunt. In fact, he's directly targeting Zelenskyy. From this, we can also see that although both Belarus and Ukraine are former Soviet republics bordering Russia, Belarus lacks natural resources and suffered a major blow from the Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster, yet it has still managed to survive by maintaining a balance between Europe and Russia up to now. In contrast, Ukraine has faced land occupation, its resources plundered by major powers, and has been engulfed in war for more than 3 years due to mishandling its relationship with Russia. To put it bluntly, the country has been devastated and its people displaced. Third, from China's perspective, there is actually no need to participate in the security guarantees orchestrated by the West. This is just rhetoric from Russia trying to get China to back it up, so China has no intention of providing so-called security guarantees. However, if the Russia-Ukraine conflict is brought to the United Nations for a security guarantee agreement, then of course China's vote would be needed. By doing this, Zelenskyy has completely blocked his own path, showing a total lack of foresight. The conclusion is, Zelenskyy has harmed Ukraine. After facing widespread criticism, Zelenskyy realized the situation and knew he could not afford to offend China. On Ukraine's Independence Day, he made his latest public statement, saying that they are building a country capable of ensuring the safety and peace of its people. He expressed his gratitude to the leaders of various countries and international organizations for their support of Ukraine and their congratulations on Independence Day. In addition to US President Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Zelenskyy also specifically mentioned Chinese President Xi Jinping. Zelenskyy said that Ukraine is willing to develop a long-term bilateral dialogue with China on the basis of mutual respect in order to achieve peace, stability, and prosperity. In addition, Chinese ambassador to the United States, Xie Feng, was invited to deliver a speech at the China-US Soybean Industry Cooperation Partners breakfast meeting. Xie Feng cited some statistics saying that over the years China has remained the largest export market for U.S. agricultural products, with half of U.S. soybean exports going to China. In 2023, U.S. agricultural exports to China reached $29.1 billion, accounting for nearly 1/5 of the total. On average, each American farmer exported nearly $9,000 worth of goods to China. However, in the first half of this year, U.S. agricultural exports to China dropped by 53% year-on-year, with soybean exports falling by as much as 51%. Xie Feng said that China is accelerating the development of a unified national market, with nearly $4.8 billion worth of physical goods traded online in a single day, and about $16.8 billion in goods being imported and exported with other countries. As the world's largest importer and exporter of agricultural products, China and the United States are natural partners in agricultural cooperation. For many years, China has remained the largest export market for U.S. agricultural products, with half of U.S. soybean exports going to China. Xie Feng said that a single soybean is proof of the golden rule that China and the United States both benefit from cooperation and both suffer from confrontation. As the Chinese saying goes, you reap what you sow. Unfortunately, with protectionism on the rise, US-China agricultural cooperation has been shrouded in uncertainty. In the first half of this year, US agricultural exports to China dropped by 53% year-on-year, with soybean exports falling by 51%. Xie Feng said, "To our American farmer friends, after the difficulties of spring planting, you are now facing the challenges of the autumn harvest. American farmers, just like Chinese farmers, work hard through wind and rain, hoping for a good harvest, a good price for their crops, and a better life." He said that agriculture should not be held hostage by politics and farmers should not have to pay the price for a trade war. The conclusion is, China is still the world's largest market for agricultural products. The protectionism that American politicians are pursuing now will only harm American farmers by causing them to lose China as a major customer. It's time for American farmers to stand up and say no to anti-China politicians.